Welcome back. President Trump says he will be imposing a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports today. My sources also tell me to expect tariffs on Europe announced this week with a reciprocal VAT tax applied to it. That should be announced either Tuesday or Wednesday. Here's White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller with me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures.
The president is making clear that we are going to pursue a policy of reciprocity. In other words, if we're getting charged 30% by Europe, then we need to charge them 30% in return. If they want to be charged less than 30%, they're going to have to lower their barriers so that it's fair and equal and, yes, reciprocal treatment. Here's another area where Europe is engaging in predatory practices. Tech companies are subject to digital taxes, censorship, and onerous financial penalties that are tens of billions of dollars every single year. Obviously, that has to go into the reciprocal treatment as well. You cannot have a situation where our country, our auto companies, our tech companies are just a piggy bank for Europe.
Yep. Chinese tariffs on about $14 billion worth of U.S. goods is also taking effect today. They range from 10 to 15%, and those tariffs will impact crude oil, liquefied natural gas, farm machinery, and other products. Joining me now is West Virginia Congressman Riley Moore. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here, and I know that you recently introduced the U.S. Reciprocal Trade Act, which boosts President Trump's ability to negotiate and issue tariffs. Why was that necessary?
Well, Maria, thanks so much for having me on. And I do believe it's necessary to the point that Stephen Miller that was just talking about, and it's trying to address these non-tariff trade barriers. And I believe this would give the president greater latitude to be able to implement reciprocity as it relates to tariffs, specifically around those non-tariff trade barriers that we've heard about. Regulations, could be taxes, could be subsidies. Obviously, we're not subsidizing our industries here in the United States the way that they are in Europe or China or around the world. So we have to be able to compete. And if those markets, if we're going to compete in those markets and our companies are going to have entrance into those markets, well, they're going to have to make it a little bit more fair. President Trump has said he is for free trade, but for fair trade. And that's what that bill is trying to address.
Yeah, and I know the president is making things reciprocal because the United States has been on their back feet when it comes to this for many, many years. But do you expect that this is going to trickle through the economy and push prices up? I mean, for example, steel and aluminum imports. Does that give the car makers, broad freedom to go raise prices on their cars because they had to pay more for aluminum and steel?
No, I don't think so. I think that what's going to end up happening is we've seen the president be able to leverage these tariffs to actually lower tariffs and create freer trade and better opportunity for our auto manufacturers and things of that nature. Yeah, obviously, if you go to Europe right now, you're not going to find an F-150 driving down the street of Munich, Germany, but you're going to find many, many European automobiles right here flooded in our markets. Of course, we like those cars, but our automobile makers here have no ability to be able to compete. So that's where this reciprocity comes in. So I don't think it's going to raise prices at all.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of President Trump's agenda is actually anti-inflationary, certainly when you think about the deregulation that's coming. So I'm not as worried as some in the market, certainly, about this issue. But I want to get your take on Congress and what the Senate is doing. The senators were in Mar-a-Lago on Friday for a meeting with President Trump, and Republicans are going against House Speaker Mike Johnson's wishes, releasing their plan to fund President Trump's agenda. The way the senators discussed it Friday. Senate Budget Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham said that the resolution will increase annual spending by nearly $86 billion, fully offset with spending cuts. Speaker Johnson admitted that there could be another delay for the House's reconciliation bill in an effort to firm up all these details. Meanwhile, a group of more than 10 New York Democrats, led by Jerry Nadler, sent a letter urging Speaker Johnson to include a repeal of the state and local tax deduction in any tax bill. So, Congressman, you've got lots of different groups within the Congress who have their own priorities, whether it's the priority of cutting spending or the priority of lifting the SALT deduction. How will this all come together? And do you feel that the Republicans are united in just getting President Trump's agenda through?
Well, just last week, I was at the White House with a group of Republican lawmakers there in the House where we were discussing that path forward. And not only did we meet there for almost over 4 hours at the White House, we then met in Speaker Johnson's office later that evening. We were very close, and it was a very, very productive conversation that we had. I think we can do all of these things that we're discussing, and that's the idea here of doing one big, beautiful bill, as the president has called it. And we can reduce mandatory spending while also extending the Trump tax cuts. You're going to see SALT is going to be addressed in a bill like this. And so we can do all of these things. But, you know, we're really in an inflection point where we have a once in a lifetime opportunity here in unified government to actually address mandatory spending.
Yeah.
Mandatory spending is the biggest driver of the debt in this country, and so we have to address that. And that's what the House Republicans are so solely focused on, while taking care of all these other agenda items that we've discussed, taxes and all the like.
So you do believe that there will be an effort to cut into mandatory spending in order to get some offsets for some of the spending in the reconciliation bill?
Yes, that's what we've been discussing. And as I said, I think this is our once in a lifetime opportunity. You know, you see government shutdowns over discretionary spending all the time in the appropriations bills. Just to be clear, discretionary spending is only 26% of every dollar that's spent annually in the United States. So we got nearly
you have a lot of choices, yeah.
Mandatory. And if we don't address that, I mean, we're in a world of hurt. You got 75% of it's mandatory spending.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've been talking about this a lot recently because what I'm told is what looks like it's mandatory may not be actually Social Security or Medicare or Medicaid and be mandatory at all. So, Congressman, we'll be watching your work on that to see what is mandatory and what isn't and what you can cut out of that. Riley Moore, thank you, sir. We'll be watching.
Thanks.
Quick break, and then Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth tells me about